Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam and Lynn, for inviting us all into your home for this evening, all 600 of us. I'd like to share with you the most important thing that I've learned as a doctor, and it also happens to be the most important thing that I've learned as a human being, and that is we can't take responsibility for somebody else's healing. And the best way that we can facilitate healing in others is by taking full responsibility for our own healing. And as a physician, what a gift that was for me to recognize that, because what that allows you to do is recognize that the best way that we can contribute to the world, the change occurs within, and the best way that we can contribute to the world is by being fully happy and whole and healthy ourselves. I'd like to share with you a slide that illustrates this concept. So as a physician or as any practitioner, we have a responsibility to prescribe the appropriate treatments from our training that we think might be helpful to the patient. The patient then has the responsibility to choose whether to take that treatment. But healing is a very different experience. Healing isn't a one-way arrow, it's a two-way arrow. And the further we go in our own healing, the better able we are to facilitate healing in others, but not because we're taking responsibility for their healing, but because we're taking responsibility for our own healing. And I know it's a common, almost universal human experience. We've all had the experience, I think, of wanting to, if we think to ourselves about, oh, if I could just make my partner understand this, or if I could just get my father to understand that, or if I could just get my friend to understand that. As a physician, we have the opportunity on a daily basis to support people in their health and healing. And the thing that I discovered, as I think many of us in the room have discovered, that if we try to change somebody else, the only thing that happens is we get frustrated and they get frustrated and our healing stops and their healing stops. And but if we instead pay attention to our own healing, something amazing happens. And I'd like to give an example of that. So as a physician, if I'm with a patient and she's just been diagnosed with cancer, and she's telling me her story, and she's telling me about how she's feeling very overwhelmed in her life, how her responsibilities in her work and her responsibilities at home, and all of these things are just, she's just feeling a sense of overwhelmed by all those responsibilities. There's two ways that I can approach that. One way is, in my mind, to begin to formulate advice for her and say to her, well, it sounds like your life is a little out of balance now, and it would be a really good idea for you to really prioritize what's important to you and structure responsibilities. That conversation can be helpful, but it's not a healing experience. It doesn't create the opportunity for a shift that can be deeply meaningful and long-lasting. But if instead of being in my mind in that experience, I move into my heart, and I think in my own life, and I feel into how in my own life I've felt numerous times in my own life how out of balance my life has been. And I feel into my own heart about the importance of taking care of my own self and about creating balance in my own life. There's something that shifts in my heart that then creates an invitation for a shift in that person's heart. Or vice versa, they're shifting in their heart. It creates an invitation for me to shift in my heart. And healing really is a two-way arrow. It's a shared experience. And when that experience happens, it's deeply meaningful and potentially long-lasting for both of us as we're learning something more about how to optimally care for our health and well-being. And as I've explored this as a physician and as a person, I have come to a greater appreciation of the role that each of us can play in supporting each other's healing, but not because we're focused on what somebody else needs to learn, but because we're taking full responsibility for our own health and well-being. And the remarkable thing in that context is words really aren't necessary. Words aren't necessary in that context when you're in relationship in that way and your hearts are both shifting. It's communicated at a level that is really beyond words. I want to give you another example because that's an example where we're both learning the same thing. And that shift in recognition is the same shift. But for an example, one of the challenges as physicians, one of the challenges is to have patients who at the end of the day or at the end of the visit, we feel drained by that experience. And I used to wonder as a physician why some patients I would feel enlivened by and why some patients I would feel drained by. And I came to discover that those patients the patients I felt drained by were asking me to take responsibility for their healing. And it's very enticing from an ego perspective as a physician for a patient to create that invitation for you, and it's often framed in these kind of words. Doctor, you're really the only person that really understands me. You're the only one that can support me. And I really need your help in overcoming this challenge that I'm going through. And in that context, very often there's the invitation to take responsibility for that person's healing. As I've come to understand that experience, if I'm able to be in that place and recognize, not in my mind about how frustrating this is, but in my heart, and recognize, okay, what's the lesson for me? What's the learning for me in that experience? What happens is I can, in that context, if I'm listening to my heart, create really healthy boundaries without words with the patient. And the healing experience for me is to recognize the importance of creating healthy relationships and not taking responsibility for something that I can't take responsibility for. There's an invitation that then occurs to the other person. The invitation is, without words, for them to begin to take fuller responsibility for their own health and healing. So that's an example where that relationship is a complementary relationship. I feel like I'm still in my infancy in understanding that remarkable relationship. And as I understand that more deeply and deeply, what it allows me to do as a physician is be in deep, compassionate relationship with people without feeling an obligation to fix them or save them. Empathy is a concept that's really, in my way of understanding it, is compassion combined with a recognition that the person is fully capable of dealing with whatever they've been given, that I don't have to fix them or save them, that I can be in compassionate relationship with them, that I can be in full loving relationship with them without feeling any obligation to do anything other than to be in compassionate relationship because they're fully capable of dealing with what they've been given, even if it were death and dying. Cancer patients, oftentimes they feel drowned in sympathy, that people are feeling sorry for them. And sympathy really is kind of the opposite. It's an expression that person, you don't feel that person is capable of dealing with the challenge that they've been given. I think this is a wonderful frontier in medicine, probably something that our mothers understood naturally, or at least the maternal archetype understands very naturally. And what a wonderful gift we could give to the world if each of us recognized that the best way that we could contribute to the health and happiness of the world is to take full responsibility for our own health and happiness. So thanks very much for listening to me tonight, and thank you to Sam and Lynn.